It's time for the Leadership Lunch Break with Joy Jackson of Speaking of Joy. Let's tune in for today's discussion.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Leadership Lunch Break. I'm Joy Jackson of Speaking of Joy. And listen, I am so glad to see you today. Okay, let's be clear. Since last time we were together, a lot has happened out here in Houston, Texas. So I first want to say thank you to everyone who text, called, emailed, prayed, thought of us during the winter storm. As you know, we are not at all used to, we're used to cold weather, but not to the point where we have no power and no water. So I want to send big thank you to everyone who reached out to check on us, and then ask you to still keep texts and your thoughts and your prayers. This is just the beginning of what has begun to uncover as far as our energy and our supply. And we never want to see ourselves in this situation again. So I ask you, please, to keep Texas in your prayers. There's still people without water. There's still people with busted pipes. And as you know, when things like that happen, gouging starts, there's a lot that happens. So I definitely want to ask you to continue to find ways you can support Texas through this time. If you know someone, if you don't know someone, I can share some things with you, but I definitely want to ask you to continue to keep us in your prayers, because this was a challenge and it was a lot to deal with. Most people say, oh, it was snowing. That's no big deal. Yeah, but those of you who say that, when it snows where you are, you have heat. So not having heat, not having access to water was really a challenge. But I want to say hurrah to all of my fellow Texans. Keep your heads up. We are Texas strong. So there's not a dilemma or a situation that we found ourselves in that we are not able to overcome. So I just wanted to pause for a minute and shout out to my Texans and to all of you who have given us support. So now I am back with the Leadership Lunch Break. I have enjoyed doing these live. So I wanted to continue. And so when I first thought about this yesterday and I started writing, my thought was to talk about that leadership is about sacrifice. And I think, yeah, most people say that's a great idea. Leadership is about sacrifice. But what I will tell you now is that I now believe that leadership is not about sacrifice. So I say that a lot of people would be like, what? Because if you know me, you know I'm big on sacrificing and giving to others and making sure that you're always finding ways to support and encourage others. That's my life's work. That's my heart. That's my passion. That's my ministry. But I will tell you that just going through a lot of things over the last couple of weeks, I have realized that leadership is not about sacrifice. And so, you know, when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about people who are in a position or title. I'm talking about influence and responsibility. So if you have influence and responsibility, you are a leader, but it's okay to not sacrifice. Okay, so what does that mean? So when we think about sacrifice, a lot of times I think we think about the ultimate sacrifice. And whether you're a believer or not, we all have heard the story, and many of us believe that the ultimate sacrifice, of course, was God sending Jesus to the earth to die for our sins. Now, that is sacrifice, to give up your life for people who you created, but you really don't know, and people who you know would betray you and hurt you. That, my friends, is absolutely sacrifice, right? So we talk about sacrifice. That's what we always think about. We think about sacrifice. And so I did a little research because I wanted to challenge you in this area of leadership not being about sacrifice by saying sacrifice is basically a religious right. It's a religious right to establish and maintain or restore right relationship between a human being and a superior being. Or so, like, people would sacrifice in the Bible days because they were trying to get in right relationship with God, or they had sinned, or they wanted to maintain right relationship. So they would sacrifice. They would sacrifice an animal. They would sacrifice and cut it and lay it on the altar in blood to atone for sins or bad ideas or decisions. And that was sacrifice. Now, it was an act of worship. So let me stop right here and say, if you are a leader, I'm pretty sure I can say that you don't necessarily worship your team or worship the people that you work with or even worship your boss. So a lot of people have a hard time thinking about leadership and sacrifice, because the idea that we have of sacrifice, no matter what our beliefs are, is that idea of laying down your life or giving up yourself or not dying basically to for the betterment of others. And so when we talk about leadership, I don't know too many leaders who would say, yes, I would absolutely die for my team or die for my organization. So I say right now, it's okay if you feel right now that you're not willing to sacrifice for your team. Now, there are people that you may choose to sacrifice for, their loved ones. There are people that you may absolutely decide, you know what? I do love my team, and I definitely want to show them my appreciation and things of that nature. But the truth of the matter is, to actually say that you would die for someone is a lot. Some of us, let's be clear, may not even feel that way about the people in our house or the people that we love. So I'm going to release you right now of that whole idea that you've got to be a leader and you've got to sacrifice. I say that leadership is not about sacrifice, but it's about selflessness. And when you think about it, that absolutely is a difference. So when we talk about sacrifice, we're talking about giving up everything, laying down your life. We're talking about a ritual. We're talking about religion. We're talking about worship. And for some people, that makes them uncomfortable. But when I say selflessness, what I'm truly talking about is your concern more for the needs of others than your own. And it's also about using the we instead of I. Selflessness is about being humble. It's about listening to others. It's about a broader view. It's about putting yourself before others in a way that uplifts the entire group. So when you think about that, that's exactly what leaders should be. Leaders should be selfless, meaning I may have a goal, I may have an agenda, but if it's not for the greater good of the team, or if it's not for the greater good of the actual organization or the people that I influence and have responsibility over, then it's not a benefit for me. So when I'm thinking about leadership and thinking about one of the characteristics that I believe is absolutely necessary in order to be a leader, it is selflessness. Are you willing to do what we need to be successful over what you need to be successful? Are you willing to actually step out and say, you know what? I want to lead this team in a way that everybody wins, where everybody is supported, where everybody is uplifted, where everybody reaches the finish line? Or am I just looking to do it for myself? Because if you're a person who only wants to promote yourself, your agenda, your ideas, your thoughts, you will not be successful as a leader. So today, I challenge you to think about leadership, not as sacrifice, because that may be something that most of us aren't willing to do. But I challenge you to actually think of leadership as selflessness. Are you able to put everyone and everyone's ideas together on the table so that you can find yourself successful? So today, I challenge you to be selfless. I challenge you to think of the we before the I so that you can find ways for your team, for those you have influence in, and for those that you work with to actually be successful. So if you don't want to sacrifice, it's okay. But be selfless. I want to thank you so much for joining me. And before we go, I definitely want to continue to invite you to my workshop that's coming. It is a workshop that I believe will actually be transformational. It's called Revisioning Your Vision Board. Let me tell you, I don't do vision boards, but I have goals. I have goals, I have ideas, and many of us do. The challenge with most of us is that by now, especially if you have had life happen, listen, those visions, those ideas are on the back burner. And what I want for you this year is for those visions, those ideas to no longer be on the back burner. So what I challenge you to do is I invite you to join me for a workshop called Revisioning Your Vision Board. This workshop will put some actual practices in play so that this time next year, you won't find yourself starting over to work out, starting over to build that business, starting over to lose weight, starting over to start journaling, starting over to writing your book, whatever those things are that you've absolutely wanted to do for your life. I want to help you get there. So my goal is to create this workshop that will challenge you and give you tools. If you've ever taken a workshop from me, you know that I believe in tangible tools that you can apply. So I invite you to register today. You can go to Eventbrite and register. It will be on March the 18th at 6:30 p.m., 6:30 to 8. And we will be a community of people working together to hold each other accountable and to find ways to make sure that we are actually reaching our vision. So I invite you to go right now and register. And I look forward to seeing you on March 18th. And I want to tell you, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to invite guests on the Leadership Lunch Break because I want some other people to share with you leadership ideas, principles, and goals. So I want you to make sure you join me every single Thursday at noon Central Standard Time as we continue to explore leadership, as we continue to find ways to make ourselves better, as we continue to find ways to make sure that we are continuing to be the best leaders we can. Until we meet again, have a great one.
Thank you for joining the Leadership Lunch Break. Join us next Thursday at noon Central Standard Time for lunch as we continue our discussions. Follow Speaking of Joy on all social media platforms or visit our website at www.speakingofjoy.com. That's www.speakingofjoye.com. Until next week.